Muhammadur Rasulullah.
Assalamu alaikum, and a very warm welcome to the program Journey to Islam, where we will be hearing inspirational stories from people all over the world who have converted to Islam Ahmadiyyat. This program is focused on bringing to light the changes some people have experienced after joining Ahmadiyya community. I have with me here today Brother Talib Man, who comes from the UK, and he would describe himself as previously being an agnostic. He has graciously agreed to share his story with us today. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the program.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
To start with, I'd like to know a bit about your childhood, whether you were religious,
Okay.
the family.
Well, when I was brought up, I grew up in the UK. I was brought up in the UK. Both my parents are Hong Kong Chinese.
Right.
So they didn't practice any mainline religion as in Buddhism, Taoism, nothing like that. They were more, I would say, kind of like respecting the traditions of, of being Chinese.
Right.
So we would unfortunately, or they would unfortunately kind of believe in a god of longevity, god of fortune, so on and so forth.
Would that be the traditions of the Chinese people?
Yes, of most Chinese.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So during my childhood, I went to a Church of England school.
Right.
So in fact, I learned more about religion at school than I did at home.
Right.
Although this is what most probably I would assign to a bit of a conflict as regards to religion.
Right.
Because I had two conflicting stories, one being at home and one being at school.
Right.
So I had Christianity at school, and then I had the traditional Chinese way of kind of not religion, but just how you should be. So at home, I had like a moral code.
Yeah.
So what to do, what is right and what is wrong.
But why would that be different from the Christian way of?
Well, actually, they're not too different at all, but in the sense that in the Chinese way that we were brought up, or in our household, Chinese are very pragmatic. So we kind of like were brought up with, like I say, a strong work ethic. Everyone had to work in the. We used to have a restaurant, so everyone had to work. Then, the only off time would be actually going to school.
Right.
So whilst at school, that's where I learned about Christianity.
Right. When did you ever learn about Islam?
Well, I mean, carrying on that thought, I wasn't particularly religious even through my teen years. That's why I would say, although not an atheist, I believed that there was something out there,
Right.
but I wouldn't attribute it to any, I think at the time I would say title, i.e. a God, Allah or Buddha.
Right.
But I did believe that there was something spiritual out there that we couldn't really have come by chance, to tell you the truth. Then I progressed into work. I went into the financial sector, so it was very materialistic, very high pressured. So I was a very stressed kind of person then. Had to be in control of everything.
Right.
Religion didn't really play that big a part of my life, even in my working years.
Okay.
It was only until, I would say, when I got into my 30s, my early 30s,
Right.
I'd reached a certain level professionally.
Right.
And I started to actually question, was this it? I had reached, I would say, an emptiness in myself, of which, just work could not fulfill.
But when you were growing up, you noticed all these problems, religious problems all over the world. Didn't
true. I mean, if we touch on that, I thought of religion from more of a historic point of view. That, there was a lot of war due to religion, whether it be from Muslims against Christians or vice versa. The religion itself through Christianity. I mean, if you look at, you know, the Catholic or the Spanish Catholics going into South America, it was used more as a weapon almost. So, you know, I viewed religion as more of a tool for humans. And in that sense, I suppose that's most probably why I didn't believe in religion per se.
Right.
But like I say, when I got into my early 30s, I felt that, and I used to have a lot of debates actually at work with my colleagues.
Right, right.
One being, you know, a very good colleague of mine, Rupert, and he would, you know, we would always debate like, look, there shouldn't be a problem with how you've been brought up. You know, you have a code of ethics, you have a moral code, you know what's right and what's wrong. Why should there be anything else? Why do you need to have a God to tell you what is right and wrong?
Right.
So this, obviously, I couldn't come up with an answer to this.
Right.
So another colleague actually had, for whatever reason, said to me, well, you know what, you're Chinese, look into Buddhism. I wasn't really interested in looking into Buddhism.
Okay.
So what I wanted to look was at something else. And at the time, we're talking about the late 90s,
right.
Islam, being a Muslim, although wasn't what I would say a mainline religion,
right.
but it hadn't had the bad press as it has subsequently.
Right.
So I thought, well, why not? I was able to go to London Mosque,
okay.
In Southfields, and you know, I was lucky enough to attend a question and answer session.
Okay.
And I hadn't been to one of these events before, so I was asked to write down a question, of which I mean, I was stuck at the time because it was my first event.
Sure.
And the person just said to me, look, you can ask anything.
Anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our Khalifa, yeah, will answer it. It doesn't matter. Okay. So I wrote down, how do you prove the existence of God to a non-believer?
Right.
So I posted my question in. It was the questioner started to recite the question, and the Khalifa just kind of like nodded and said, and his answer was, well, if you look around you, I've actually dealt with this question quite in depth within my book. So if you look at my book, you look at the chapters within my book relating to the existence of God.
That is rationality, isn't it?
Yes, rationality.
Okay.
So he said, look at the chapters regarding the existence of God, and you'll get your answer. But in short, if you look around you, how can this be by chance? So this struck a chord with me.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, I was sat at the back of the hall, and I personally felt it's a bit of a vague answer. To tell you the truth, I could have come up with that answer.
At the time, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And whilst I was thinking this, I was obviously alone with my thoughts. The next question had started to be asked, and the fourth Khalifa has put his hand up and stopped the questioner mid-question and looked at me directly and said, no, look, you can't just look superficially around you. You know, look at the perfection of just a leaf. Look at nature itself here. Yeah. How can that be by chance? It has to be by a higher being.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It has to be by God.
Yeah.
And then he let the questionnaire carry on with the next question. And I felt, I'm sure, you know, we've all felt this, that when you've been caught, you know, chatting at the back of a room by your teacher, that's exactly how I felt. You know, but the weird thing was that how could he have heard me?
Right.
Really, how could he have heard me?
Because he was addressing your question, isn't it?
Yes, he addressed it directly in my head.
Yeah.
So I was a bit, you would say, befuddled by this. I walked out of the meeting, and at that point, a brother came up to present me with Huzur's book, the Fourth Calipha's book.
Yeah.
And he'd signed it for me, and he'd actually marked the chapters. So I suppose this was the beginning of my understanding, or I wouldn't say understanding, but my journey to Islam.
So you didn't go through any other sect? You came straight into
No, because to me at that time, I didn't really know that there were other sects.
Right.
Yeah?
Yeah.
For whatever reason, I mean, I look back now, that obviously God had already moved me in this way.
Right.
But I had found my way to Ahmadiyyat in this sense.
Right.
So I was invited later on in that year to attend what's known as the Jalsa. So it's a big meeting, it's an international meeting of all Jamaat members from around the world.
Yeah.
And this used to be held at Tilford in Surrey, in the UK.
Yeah.
So I was in the main marquee, I was listening to the speeches, and what actually struck me mostly was the logic of the speeches, the rationality of the speeches. And at that point, I kind of, went out to get some drinks or whatever from the main marquee,
right.
The Jalsa. And then I heard this kind of like, this shouting, Allahu Akbar, Takbir, Takbir, and I didn't know what all this commotion was going on about. Yeah? I wasn't aware of what Takbir meant.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I came back into the Jalsa, and I asked the guy on the door. I said, "What's happening? Everyone seems to be kind of like getting emotional. Why?"
Yeah.
And he said, "Look, we're seeing the fulfillment of a prophecy here.
Right.
That kings will come to seek blessings from his cloth."
Yeah.
And on the stage was the fourth Calipha,
right.
with an African king. So, and I felt so moved that I actually started to cry.
Right.
But you see, I didn't understand why I was crying, because to me, I don't know anything about this prophecy.
Sure.
I have no real experience of Huzur.
Yeah.
I don't know what all this is about. So I was quite, you would say, the expression like a bit of a train wreck. So I'm walking around the site, Islamabad, Tilford, and at this point I met up with a very pious man called Osman Chu, Chini Saab.
Okay.
And I didn't know him.
Yeah.
Most probably he saw one Chinese face, I saw one Chinese face, and we made a connection in that sense.
Yeah.
But he obviously saw that there's something wrong with me, not quite right. So he just led me by the hand. He said, "Look, I live here. Come, have some juice, sit down. Is there something troubling you?" And so we went back to his house, and I related what was happening.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm very lucky to be here. I said, I don't understand what you mean. Really, I don't.
Yeah.
I said, because what I've actually a party to, I think, is something is you have within you a little spark, and that spark is called Iman, faith. And that has been sparked in you today. And I said, why? What's all that about? I said, well, look, it's quite logical. You're born, you crawl, you learn to crawl, then you toddle, then you walk, and then you run.
Yeah.
So that is your physical self.
Yeah.
You also have a moral self,
right.
and you have a spiritual self.
Okay.
3 things within you. And today, obviously, that spark, your spiritual self has started, has been awakened. And now you have to nourish that, like you nourish a baby.
Sure.
So, this was so I started to have an understanding of what these feelings were, really.
Okay. Did you at any time discuss this with your parents?
Yes, I mean, my parents, like I say, the traditional Chinese, so they're very stuck in their ways,
Yeah.
For them, they perceived Muslims and Islam to mean, kind of like this is very extreme as a religion.
Right.
I think we had a relative once who was a convert.
Right.
And so my father took her as this aunt of mine and related it. Said, but you know, they're crazy. I said, but why are they crazy? Oh, they give their, you know, she gave away her property.
Right.
I said, but to who? Oh, to the kind of like poor. What are you going to do? Why are you going to do this? So I'm like, but isn't that a good thing?
Right.
So, so with them, mainly my father, it was always kind of like, not a battle, but just kind of, I had to just state everything, because for him, it's the same as me really. Islam and being a Muslim was a new experience.
Did you discuss this with your auntie?
Well, actually, no, this aunt had passed away.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So there's a relation that had passed away.
Okay.
But you see, one of the things, as I actually progressed within Ahmadiyyat and becoming a Muslim, because at this point I still hadn't taken Bai'at, I just kept on saying to my parents, look, you know what, I can tell you, right, that I'm a changed person, that, you know, I'm going to be doing good deeds for the rest of my life, but that's just me telling you that. That's just a load of hot air. You know, what I will do is I'll make you one promise that, you know, if you tell me, you really can't, I mean, this is one thing that I have to do for myself, but if you see that it has nothing, kind of like no contradictions within your life, then let me do this.
That's right.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And it doesn't contradict you. But otherwise, whatever you command me to do, as parents, I have to abide by what you say as well.
Did you make that point that has come from Islam?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
So, you know, obviously, you know, my mother was very, very happy about that.
Right.
But in terms of, you know, it was still a hard transition. You know, I won't say it wasn't.
Right.
But, you know, any journey which is worth anything, you know, has to be hard.
It has to be hard. But at what point did you actually decide that, okay, I found this Jamaat, this is where I belong?
Well, I mean, after that first Jalsa that I went to, I was invited to the Jalsa again the following year.
Right.
And all during this whole year's, that year of time, I'd done a lot of reading.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, the philosophy of the teachings of Islam.
Okay.
Yeah, the Promised Messiah's book. So, you know, all this reading and my kind of like my chats with other people within the Jamaat,
right.
Yeah, hadn't, I mean, I wouldn't say I had a negative approach to it.
Yeah.
I would say I was more kind of like reticent.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was more cautious, but which was how I used to be.
Sure.
I mean, at work, I was a senior trader,
Right.
a foreign exchange trader.
Right.
So risk was inherent within my job.
Sure.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So I would appreciate that. So I suppose that's kind of like intrinsic to my character before Islam.
Sure.
That I was a very cautious person, that I would have to look at, you know, all the ins and outs and all the pros and cons.
Sure. Yeah.
And sometimes that's not the best way, because you end up not making a decision.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. So then.
Oh, sorry. So yes, I was invited to the Jalsa the following year.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'd done a lot of reading, met a lot of people up to that point, and yeah, you know, no matter how I would put a question to myself, it would be answered,
Right.
and in a positive way, so that I was actually left with no decision or no option,
Right.
but to accept
Right.
that this was the correct religion for myself, because it was the one religion which was focused on that it's a journey, not for anyone else, but for you,
Right.
and solely yourself. And that journey is for you to find God.
So you think that the Khilafat is what is the main difference, if you like, between us and the non-Ahmadi Muslims?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Because without that, we would just be one Marabi, one Maulvi, yeah, contesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, whereas we're not. I mean, this goes back to, I suppose, all the way back to my conversations with my colleague Rupert, in the sense that he used to say, look, I know you, I've worked with you for so many years. You're a good guy, yeah, you know your morals. Why do you need a God? Or why do you need belief in a God to vindicate that? So I used to, and then I had the answer. And my answer was this, that, look, what makes, okay, we're colleagues, you know me, I know you. If these rules and laws are man-made, what makes one man better than another?
Right.
Yeah? Are you better than I were? Am I better than you?
You couldn't answer?
You can't answer that.
Yeah.
So that's why I abrogate this to the will of God, to the law of God.
Right.
So then there is no dispute. And to me, there has to be absolutes, in a sense, where there is no absolute.
Right.
Because another thing which comes to mind is that us Chinese, we are hardwired to believe in tangibility, in things that we can see, like this table.
Yeah.
So once again, how can you believe in a God when you cannot have the tangibility of God?
Yeah.
It's hard to explain, but is that belief is found within yourself.
You had an encounter with Ibrahim Noonan, Sahib, one of our missionaries.
I mean, this goes towards, as my journey into the Jamaat and Islam were hand in hand, really. Yeah. And really, I didn't know that there was a difference.
Okay.
Yeah, because at the time, there were no big kind of like divisions within Islam, that we could see. Yeah. Okay, you knew by countries that Iran and Iraq were different.
Yeah.
But within this country, not really. Yes, you did have different mosques, but from an outsider's point of view, they're all the same. Right. Yeah. So I think I was actually at Croydon Mission House for some other reason. I think it's some event, and the then Sadr, or
President,
of the kind of like the youth movement within the Jamaat, Ibrahim Noonan Saab, he was there, and he actually had another convert.
Right.
And I kind of like, I thought, well, actually, I need to sit in on this, because I need to know what he's talking about.
Sure.
So he said, yeah, Talib, sit down. I'm just kind of providing you the proofs. I mean, this is what every Ahmadi needs to know.
Right.
Because when other non-Ahmadis ask you, why do you believe? Can you prove it? Then you need to be able to prove it, and these are the proofs. Yeah. So he showed the proofs of the promised Messiah. Okay. Yeah, the signs that were foretold, and the signs that, are there to see. I mean, not in terms of just hollow words. Yeah, I mean, he actually had charts, meteorological charts dating back to the time of the promised Messiah, where you had the solar and lunar eclipses.
Sure.
Yeah? Yeah. So I suppose for me it was just the last piece of a jigsaw.
Okay.
And when I kind of looked at his proofs, I just thought, well, actually, I'm a logical person. This sounds logical to me. Sure. Yeah? How can you refute this? So he asked me, do you truly, I mean, at this point, I hadn't taken back, I hadn't gone to my second Jalsa.
Right.
And Ibrahim Noonan is a very straight kind of person. Sure. I mean, if those within the community would know, he doesn't really bandy his words. And he asked me, well, Talib, I've shown you this new convert as well. So do you believe? Can you refute it? I said, well, no, I can't. I can't refute it.
Right.
So what's your answer then? I said, well, then, in the absence of, you've eliminated all other possibilities. Yeah. Yeah. And there's only one answer left on the table. Then you must, common sense would dictate, logic would dictate that must be the answer.
The answer.
And the answer is, that, the belief in the promised Messiah.
Thanks. Do you have any message for the viewers?
Yes, I mean, you know, even if you haven't found Islam or Ahmadiyyat, yeah, you should always search for it. I mean, the Holy Prophet said, you know, knowledge, yeah. Even if you have to go as far as China, yeah, I mean, I'm not just mentioning it because I'm Chinese, but you must seek it, yeah. And you know what? If you take one step towards God, He'll take 8 steps towards you. So don't give up. Always keep trying.
Okay. Thank you very much, Brother Talib, for sharing your inspirational story with us. Viewers, this is all we have time for. We hope to have you again next time when we have different stories to tell you or to share with you from another brother of ours. Thank you very much.
Rasulullah